long time. He was a very old guy when he died. I mean,
Yeah.
his career in show business was like 60 plus years or something. It was ridiculous.
But I got to tell you, he took bitterness to
He did.
a high level.
And God bless him for that.
Yeah.
His career in show business was like 60 plus years or something. It was ridiculous. All right. Sharing right now.
Shit, disappeared. See if I don't catch the little thing in the bottom left part of the screen when it first comes up. Then I have to go the long way.
You're screwed at that point.
Have to take the long way. Huh? Did you see the story about the Illinois guy who got the hate threats too, just
I
like
did
the
see
Ohio
that.
State guy? Yeah.
Well, surely that stuff is like bracket and betting involved, right? Surely that's what that's got to be.
In which case, it's excusable.
I'm okay with it. Yes, I'm all for it.
If you have a reason, then you've got a reason. And who are you to judge? Who am I to judge? Right?
Right.
Okay. Ready?
I am.
Okay. It is the Brad and Britt cast, our second one for this week. We're glad you are with us on Facebook and YouTube and the other live platforms. We're in the 1:30 Eastern hour on Tuesday, and on Monday afternoon, late in the afternoon, I was in a Harris Teeter store. For you locals, this is the one at Pisgah Church and Elm Street. Right next to it is an ABC store where,
Mhm.
and we buy very little liquor in our. I mean, honest to God, if it's once a decade,
That's
it's a
your
lot.
wasn't that your New Year's resolution to go ahead and try to buy more liquor?
It was, and because I was just standing there before I went in, I got the word from headquarters to pick up a bottle of vodka. And you ready? This is not my preferred, but it is my wife's. She likes Southern Comfort, and apparently that goes back to probably what she did in the dorm room
I'm
at
sure.
Tufts
Yeah.
back in '73. I'm
It's a
just guessing.
popular yeah, it's a popular college drink. It's a popular
Right,
college
right, right.
beverage.
So I buy it. I go into the Harris Teeter. So this is like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and for some reason, and this occasionally happens, they must have goofed up their staffing, and 4 or 5 o'clock, that's busy time in a grocery store, and they had one aisle open, one checker there. Okay, so the next thing you know, there's 12, 15 people in line, and they resolved it very, very quickly. But for a moment, you're thinking, oh boy. And now every time that happens, I think there is no way I'm going to get pissed over this. This is not a life changing
Mhm.
thing. If I have to wait 10 minutes to get, big deal. And finally, I got to the front of the line. They moved me up very quickly, and the guy apologized. He might have been the manager. I said, "You do not need to apologize. It happens, and there is no way it's that big of a deal. So it's all good." All right. So then I left, and within I guess an hour or so, the news about what happened in the King supermarket. By the way, also a subsidiary of Kroger's, just like Harris Teeter. It's
Mhm.
called King Supers out there. The shootings occurred, and I thought, wow, this is the randomness of life. All right, because you can be anywhere. We know this, and something can happen. Something could trigger some nut, and that some nut may be armed to the teeth, which you don't know about. Next thing you know, he's shooting. We don't know what the quote official motive was for this guy in Colorado,
No.
but just think about your interactions every day, and you're in places you don't know, and it really could happen. And you know, they're all terrible. Every incident is heartbreaking. I can't remember. Damn it! I should have written this down. I think at 8 o'clock last night, 9 o'clock last night, some fuckface Republican was complaining. I swear to you, why isn't Joe Biden lowering the flag to half staff?
Right.
This was at 8 o'clock
Right.
that night, and of course, it's not even worth discussing because, of course, he did on Tuesday, and of course, they were probably already still at half staff from the Atlanta shootings last week.
That's the thing. If we keep them at half staff, they're just going to stay at half staff. Basically, is what's going to happen.
There now needs to be, I guess, half of a half staff. Got to get down to quarter.
There's going to be a time. There's going to be a generation of children in America that are going to go, "Why is the flag all the way up?" That's what's going to be unusual in America at some point, which is very, very sad. I don't know what the answer is. I have no idea. Is it? Or have we finally had enough? I don't know. I mean, this guy only killed 10 people. He only killed one police officer, who was 51 years old, who only had 7 children that he left behind. We have a Democratic president. We have a Democratic House. We have a Democratic Senate. At this point, is this Joe Biden's third rail? If he grabs this, is this the fastest way to make sure that he doesn't get reelected? Keeping in mind the National Rifle Association, while they still puppet many Republican politicians, are weaker than they've been probably at least in a generation. They're probably as in disarray and as awful and mismanaged. But again, they've been able to use this and this issue time and time again. And is it too soon to talk about gun control, Brad? Is this an issue that?
By the way, every one of your annoying cliches about this is now wrong. They're not yours, but you're just repeating what's said. I understand that.
Exactly. Well, it happens time and time again, and it's always too soon to talk about it, and it's always an attack on the second.
No, it's always never too soon.
It's always an attack on the Second Amendment, because if you can't go out and get an AR-15 and blast people while they're buying Doritos, then obviously that's going to affect your ability to hunt out in the middle of Indiana. I mean, it's part of our great tradition and protect your family. So I don't know what to do here.
If all that shit carried any weight, Trump would have been reelected, and he wasn't. It didn't.
He didn't miss it by that much.
Right. And Joe Biden, remember, all Democrats are campaigned against by saying that they're going to grab your guns, and they never do, and they won't. And Trump lost. And I don't think the NRA was any kind of factor in the last election.
I don't either.
There were zero, none. So that's off the boards. I think Joe Biden has a lot of political capital to work with right here. And Tuesday afternoon, he laid it out very, very simply. And let's just put aside the fact he's not allowed to talk about this the day after.
Exactly.
That's forget that.
You just can never talk about it.
Right. Yeah, we never talk about it. He pointed out rightfully that the House of Representatives, which really is as fucked up as it is, as gerrymandered as a lot of the seats are, because there's 435 of them, they overall represent the United States better than the Senate, which is just the most distorted piece of shit right now because of the divisions in the country and the way things have sorted out over the years. The House has passed the gun legislation that would expand registration and background checks and the like. And again, this isn't grabbing anybody's gun. This isn't repealing the Second Amendment. They're going to repeal your Second Amendment. Okay, that didn't work. How many times did you hear him say that? How many times did you not want to throw a pot or a pan?
Look,
because you knew it was a lie. It was never going to happen.
It's not over, and he's going to go on Fox and he's going to talk about our beautiful Second Amendment. Our beautiful Second Amendment is going to be like paraded up and down, back and forth.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You know what I think is good right now, even just now compared to 6 months ago, you've got a few brand new super off the charts, over the cliff gun nuts,
Yeah.
like Marjorie Taylor Greene and
Yeah.
Lauren Boebert
Yeah.
from Colorado, of
Yeah.
all places, who's already mouthed off inappropriately about this. And your original question is this going to be well, obviously, if Sandy Hook didn't do it, nothing will, in terms of an individual. If 20 plus kids being mowed down in a school didn't change things, and there was a Democratic president then, but there was a Republican Senate, I think, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you remember that the election was won for Joe Biden at the presidential level in a lot of those ringing suburbs around major markets like Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a winning issue in places like that. Though it just is. And this is a moment where I think the pressure builds. Now, Ted Cruz, I'm sure you saw the Ted Cruz moment of assholery this morning, or read about it. He stood up strongly for thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, I love it.
Just want you to know, he stood up strongly for thoughts and prayers, because I guess Ted Cruz is the domestic answer to never misses an opportunity to miss an opportunity to not be an asshole. He's always going to be there for you. And that race for biggest Republican jerk, man, it just back and forth. Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio,
Josh Hawley.
So many of them. Josh Hawley. It's so hard. Mitch McConnell. It's so hard because every day somebody does something really, really spectacular to jump back into the lead. It's like sometimes in a Kentucky Derby, or the lead changes a lot. Most of the time it doesn't, but in this case, the lead is continually changing. But I have to tell you, Ted Cruz comes with a lot of assholery in his.
It's hard to beat him. It really is. He's the Jabba the Hutt, the King Kong, the Godzilla of assholery. Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee staged yet another defense of guns and gun owners at a hearing on Tuesday, falsely accusing the Democratic counterparts of trying to take away guns from law-abiding citizens in the wake of 2 mass shootings in Atlanta and Boulder over the last week. This is the Ted Cruz quote. Every time there's a shooting, we play this ridiculous theater where this committee gets together and proposes a bunch of laws that would do nothing to stop these murders. What happens in this committee after every mass shooting is Democrats propose taking away guns from law-abiding citizens because that's their political objective. That is the quote from Senator Ted Cruz, of course, who is a Senate Republican from, I guess, Mexico. I don't know. Maybe that's where he was going, to buy some guns.
Okay, yeah, it's full of shit. Nobody's taking everybody's guns. But I would dig into the files, and not us, but it wouldn't be hard to find that right after the Parkland shootings in Florida, if you recall, for just a brief shining moment, Donald Trump attempted, faked even, pretending to care.
Right.
Remember that? And he had, I think, the families up to the White House. And there are some sound bites and quotes from those couple of days out of Trump that I believe would be very, very effective. Because you know what happens when Trump ever says anything rational or not completely sopping to the furthest reaches of the crazies and the Trumpers, or in this case, the NRA people. It's forgotten in about 2 seconds, right?
Let me take you back to May 4th of 2018. The Reuters news service reporting President Donald Trump enthusiastically embraced the National Rifle Association on Friday. That would be in this story, vowing not to tighten U.S. firearms laws, despite suggesting after a Florida school shooting he would take on the powerful gun rights group.
There you go.
At the NRA's annual convention in Dallas, Trump called again for arming teachers and increasing school security to head off future mass shootings like the one at Parkland, Florida, that killed 17 people. Such measures are supported by the National Rifle Association.
Right. So what you're reading is the follow-up to the moment of lucidity that he had, right?
Right.
Because clearly when he said those original things that actually did make some sense and were conciliatory and might have brought the country together on the idea of some gun regulations that like 80, 90, 100% of people really do agree on. Again, when you're asked in a poll about these measures, but then if you add on, Democrats want to pass a law that says, right, and then it plunges down, and then Republicans are 98% no. It's the same phenomenon. We see it all.
What we're driven from by in America is a segment of the population that still exists that believes it can't happen here. I believe this with all of my heart, and they absolutely walk around with their heads in the clouds. And it has happened in big cities and small towns. And it has happened in the north, the southeast, and the west. It has happened in Texas. It has happened in Colorado and Florida and New York. And it has happened in every state. I don't know if it's happened in Guam and Puerto Rico. I don't know if it's happened in our commonwealths and our protectorates. But it's happened every single place. I often go back to this story. When they shot at a church just outside San Antonio several years ago, I was listening on NPR that evening, and the guy goes, "I just didn't think that could happen here." And the reporter goes, "Well, why did you think that?" He goes, "Well, because everybody here has guns." It happens in communities where everybody has guns. It happens in communities where not a lot of people have guns. And I just feel that there's a segment of Americans that still walk around and they just don't believe it can happen here, Brad. And it goes back to my corollary. Nothing that happens that's important to Republicans happens unless it happens to them. And there have not been enough Republicans who have lost family members or died in order to have this any kind of impact. And I'm very frustrated, like everyone else is. I hope that Joe Biden is the guy to go after this and not care about his political future, because that's the only way to solve this. You have to go out there and do something and care about people's lives instead of the next election, and the midterms and all this other happiness. You have to go out there and do something, because I do think that there's a larger segment of America that's just so tired of waking up and seeing another movie theater, grocery store, school, church where double figures of people have died. It just has happened too many times, and people are so sick of it. And that's what I hope that Joe Biden is able to at least attempt to fix.
I agree with everything you said, except for one little sentence in the middle there. And this goes back to what I said 5 minutes ago. You said that Joe Biden needs to act like he doesn't care about his political future and do the right thing. I don't think it's a losing issue right now. I think that the majority of Americans realize what the truth is, and it's just a question of leadership here. And the gun lobby, it really is a shell of its former self. And yes, right. I know they're picking up their headquarters and moving from New York to Texas
after they declare bankruptcy. Apparently
they're bankrupt. Right. So again, they're not the same thing. Wayne LaPierre, for all I know, may end up sharing a prison cell with Trump.
Oh, how sad would that be? Oh, the tears in my eyes.
When was the last time you heard his name? He's in so much trouble.
Well, how many free houses has he grabbed? I'm not sure. Yeah. I couldn't tell you.
Is he an embezzler? I mean, he did all kinds of shit.
Well, there's fraud. I don't know what it's. That's for the legal guys to figure out what it was. I'm not sure if it's embezzlement or just plain old fraud or what it was, but it's something.
Yeah. Now, one more little nugget to get in here, because I'm always monitoring this at 8 o'clock. Again, 8 o'clock last night on the two cable networks, and then Fox, if you want to call it a cable network. I just call it an entertainment mishmash that disguises itself and pretends it's a news network. But that was when the story was really starting to coalesce, and you were starting to understand that because you weren't hearing how many people had been shot, what was going on, that this might be bigger than originally thought. Because earlier in the day, it sounded, they got the guy, and I don't see anybody. It might be one or two people. Obviously, it was getting big, and it was wall-to-wall coverage on CNN and MSNBC. And at 8 o'clock, which is Tucker time, the story did not exist. Did not matter. They were either on immigration or Joe Biden's latest gaffe. It didn't matter. So if you were ever questioning for 1 second the concept that Fox is not a real news network, that all it is a right-wing Republican propaganda arm, whether it's for Donald Trump as president or whatever comes after him. That was proof, because this was a story that quickly became obvious. It was important to cover wall to wall until you had some numbers coming out. And certainly at the beginning of every hour, where people do start to tune in very often, 8, 9, 10 o'clock here in the East. But the fact that they were ignoring it, and then you go, all right, well, so what's the pathology behind that?
Well, Tucker Carlson's running for president, apparently.
Well, it's not just that. How about this? I can be as cynical as I want about Fox, can I? Why can't
Yeah, you can. Because we're on a podcast.
My guess is, had they known at that hour that the shooter had a Muslim surname, they would have been wall to wall. But they didn't know yet, right? Might have just been.
Well, did they know that a cop who leaves behind 7 children had been killed? I mean, that seems to be something that Fox would at least be somewhat sensitive to.
Not enough if it was a white guy that killed him.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's the perpetrator, because, as you know, the amount of time they've devoted, say, to Officer Sicknick is about as much time as it takes you to pull off this piece of paper and drop it. Not much. That's about a tenth of a second.
You make a fair point.
But that's what I do. So here's my wrap up on this, and we can talk about some other things, surely too. There has to be some middle ground between, and let's take the most outlandish radical view of, quote, one side or the other, and there shouldn't be two sides on this.
No, they're equal sides that should be considered equally on this. Absolutely, perfectly, yeah.
Right. It will be, nobody's allowed to have a gun in the United States. They're all going to be rolled up and burned and thrown into the Mississippi River. Well, no one have a gun. That's what the Democrats want to do. Right. If we do anything. And then on the other side, it's, well, another Muslim. They all have to leave the country. There has to be something. There has to be something in between.
Choose a lane. Just choose a lane on that one.
There's a lot of lanes in between there.
Yeah.
And we can't seem to have any kind of. But I just think that, and you'll see the clips of Biden from the noon hour on Tuesday later. He was very focused and said what he wanted to say. And got it out there. And if for 1 second the criticism of him is, how dare he bring this up on a day like this, then you know what you'll know? That he has the high ground.
Yeah, if they truly go with it's too soon to talk about this, and it's like insulting to the victims of this to talk about gun, then yeah, that's bullshit, and we've heard enough of that, and shut up. Just shut up, because we've heard that way too many times. You guys have tried to use that 100 times, and we never get around to actually talking about the people, the stuff that's killing the people that are dead. We never get around to it for some reason or other. The president said, "I do not need to wait another minute, let alone an hour, to take common sense steps that will save lives in the future." He listed a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, as well as strengthening the background check system by closing loopholes as areas he would like to see Congress act on. He made no mention of gun control in the aftermath of last week's shootings in Atlanta, including during remarks after visiting the city, but he faced increasing pressure to voice an opinion on the matter after another mass killing in Colorado, and this is coming from CNN. As the nation's posture on guns has evolved, Biden has been front and center at almost every stop along the way for more than 3 decades, from the triumph of the 10-year ban on assault weapons in 1994. God, that seems like such a long time ago. That seems like way more than 27 years ago, doesn't it?
Hey, I even think the Oakland Raiders were still decent in 94, weren't they?
Shut up.
That's how long ago that was.
To the disappointment of failed push for universal background checks in the wake of the Sandy Hook massacre. At this point, I'm going to pause, and I'm going to recommend the series on Vice called The Search for QAnon. There's a 3-part series they have on the QAnon phenomenon. That's fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating. They do a great job. They never come to one conclusion, but one off the rails completely crazy ass idiot who apparently used to work for the CIA still forwards the idea that the Sandy Hook thing was a false flag and that those kids that were allegedly, I'm going to put in quotations with my hands, murdered at Sandy Hook later showed up and sang at the Super Bowl. Because if you were going to do something and pull something off where you were lying about children being murdered, you would want them on the highest rated television show of the year. That's how you would hide them, Brad, in plain sight in such a way.
Is this the couple shows they actually name who Q is? Is this the one where they show the guy who supposedly
not definitively? They have several theories, and I'll just go ahead and get you down to the conclusion. And the conclusion is it's probably not some crazy ass 430-pound guy up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, on his keyboard eating pizza every night. It's probably somebody who used to be in government, used to be fairly high in government, possibly whose name might rhyme with Michael Klin. It might be somebody along that level or somebody who was associated with Michael Klin, one of those people. So it's not a joke. It seems to be a fairly structured, decent operation that's going out there, and it still is running a lot of shit in America and inspiring a lot of terrorism as we speak. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. So the shooting in Colorado, and you do not feel this is the third rail, and you do feel that Joe Biden has some leverage here, and he has some slack to go after and do something on this one.
And remember, we're in the first 100 days. This is when you take your shot. Joe Biden is saying, I want to be not a caretaker president. I'm not a placeholder for the next Democrat in the 20. I want to get shit done, and I want to be remembered along with FDR and LBJ in terms of transforming the social fabric of the country and its relationship to government and big government. And I want to show you once and for all that it's been 40 years since Ronald Reagan said government's not the solution, government is the problem. And I'm going to prove to you, along with the Democrats in Congress, that government can be a good solution for a lot of the problems. And it can be the only solution for some problems. And we're going to do our level best to show you. And the passage of the $1.9 trillion rescue package for the economy is the beginning. They're talking about infrastructure and chopping that up into a couple different pieces. You have movement here, and I'm betting you they're going to move fast on this, on guns. And I think a great way to integrate the issue of gun control, background checks, the things that are in the House passed legislation that just sits there on Mitch McConnell's desk underneath his Fling magazine from 1984.
Fling magazine.
Well, you didn't get Fling?
No, I wasn't a big Fling guy.
Okay. Gent. Is to use the leverage involved in voters' rights. And there are places, not everywhere, but there are a lot of places in this country where you can go in and get a gun the same day that you want to buy a gun. But apparently registering to vote and voting on the same day, that's a threat to America. But buying a gun and walking out of there and shooting up a grocery store or a school or a church, not a threat. The founding fathers most definitely could see hundreds of years into the future, and they were surely more afraid of more people being included in the voter pool than were involved in 1796, which was essentially white, rich, landowning males. They definitely were afraid that would not hold forever. But on guns, they were absolutely prescient. They knew that forever it would be a good idea to have go in and buy the gun, go in and use the gun, but go in and register to vote? No. Can't
They
do
didn't
that.
want that. No.
Can't vote the same day. I think, and again, I said that very clumsily, but you get the point.
Yeah, more gun owners good, more voters bad.
There you go.
Basically, that's the Republican platform, right?
Well, how about wait? Let's make it even simpler. More guns good, more votes bad.
That's it.
That's the Republican.
That's
the Republican view of America. More guns. That should be one of those obnoxious Facebook things. I'll put that up later.
That should.
Guns good.
That's a good trolling thing. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer today renewed his promise to set a floor vote on universal background checks for gun buyers after 2 mass shootings in 1 week. The New York Democrats' remarks come less than 24 hours after a gunman killed 10 people at a grocery store in Boulder, including that police officer we talked about. And less than a week after 8 people were killed at spas in Atlanta, 6 of the people killed in Atlanta were women of Asian descent. Nonetheless, Senate background checks legislation unlikely to win the 60 votes to overcome the ever popular filibuster. Brad, is this going to be what he uses to get rid of the filibuster that he's been talking about now for a couple of months?
It's just another piece of evidence. It's another thing that says how many issues are we going to have that are 70-30, 80-20 with the public that go nowhere because we have a Senate that is made up of 50-50, but the smallest states have a completely disproportionate effect on that 50 that is the minority 50, because the 50 on the Democratic side is 50 plus 1, so they're the majority. We all know that. How many minority blockages of what the majority in this country wants and deserves and should have under our Constitution? How many things have to be blocked? I say, and I think the threat that Mitch McConnell, and by the way, he was trying to out mob boss Trump last week, right?
Yeah,
when he made
trying.
that little thing. If you think that it sucks now, just wait till we get control of the fucking Senate without no fucking filibuster. We're gonna disband the unions. We're gonna pass out guns to babies right in their cribs, like I've always said was a good idea.
Are you gonna take a president's Supreme Court nominee and not even allow it to be voted on? Are you gonna do something crazy like that?
Yeah, he would never do anything. Oh,
that's
he already
true.
did something like that.
I'm sorry. I'm just talking out of my ass now. I apologize.
Right. So, there has been a building consensus in this country that too many people who shouldn't have guns have them. That's a broad statement, but most people believe that. And there are things that can be done. Again, like my original radical, idiotic idea of either take all the guns or throw out all the Muslims after a shooting by one. There's something in between that, and there's something here in between, what we're talking about in terms of getting some legislation that most people do agree on, and that's the House bill that's already passed and is being left to die in Uncle Mitch's desk. And Joe Biden, I think he's in a very, very advantageous position here. He knows what it's like to tragically lose a family member, not through a mass shooting, but guess what? Disease counts, and car accident when your child is 2 years old, that counts too. It's
I'll
just
give you
as
that.
painful.
I'll give you that.
So he knows that. And I'm waiting. I am waiting, and let us mark the day when it will happen soon. Some asshole, and it could be Ted Cruz. It could be any of these people. They're going to say, I am sick of Joe Biden using his own personal tragedies to falsely empathize with other people. Is it coming? Is it coming?
Well,
Britt?
that's usually when you get the Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity to run that out. They don't necessarily need an elected official. But these guys, like you said, these are tremendous assholes. Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz are really massive assholes, and it very well could be one of them for sure.
All right.
I mean, this was in the past, God rest his soul. This is where you would use a Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh would say something absolutely insensitive about that, and there would be 5 minutes of hand wringing, and some people would go, well, I distance myself from those comments, and then everybody would go on about their business.
Right. I'll tell you what. If you can, after we're done, I want you to book Little Rush for tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. I know
I don't.
he's. I know he's busy today. He's working with all the old affiliates because they're trying to figure out what shit to recycle for the next 100 years on his show, which is, by the way, what a great idea. After what? How long has he been dead? About 6 weeks.
It was.
Right?
I'll tell you when it was. It was in February. It was like the middle of February.
Yeah. Okay,
That's when I got. It was the day I got my first shot.
Right. So at least 5 weeks. And,
yeah.
And after all this time, after all this agony, they really have decided they're going to keep the name on whatever they're syndicating, right, in that noon to 3 hour.
Exactly.
And they're going to just keep replaying his crap with current hosts, including one of our successors at WBT, the afternoon guy there, whoever his name, Brent Fucko Face or whatever.
Arbuckle, John Arbuckle. I can't. What is that guy's name?
Right.
It was the day that Rush Limbaugh assumed room temperature was February the 17th. February the 17th, Brad, a mere 3 days after Valentine's Day.
Right. So after all this time, that's all they just keep replaying his crap, and most stations won't take it. I'm guessing they'll run their own show, put their own local person in there.
I saw a couple of people. I know WSB in Atlanta, and then the station down in Orlando decided, fuck it, we just don't want to talk about how great the dead guy was forever. And then the guy who allegedly is supposed to take his spot, what's his name, Dan Bongino or something like that. I don't know who that guy is. They've decided to roll that show out, but it's not going to be available to those affiliates until May. So we still have at least like another 6 weeks of reminiscing about how wonderful Rush was and how we missed him.
I don't, and obviously they know this, but it's just amazing how quickly people adjust to whatever reality is in their life every day, particularly when there's no TV show or radio show that it was there, then it isn't there. And you know what you do? You find something else to do with your life and with your time.
Anything.
And we can talk about this with Little Rush tomorrow. The one thing I think we can all agree on, he did a good job of convincing millions of people that time in between noon and 3 was a time to spend with him. It wasn't a time to spend with WBT. It wasn't time to spend with WLS and shit. No, it was his show, and whatever they put on after that is just another radio show. And it's so lame. It's so lame to keep recycling. Let's put it this way. After Johnny Carson retired, after David Letterman retired,
right,
they didn't just keep running their reruns at 11:30 at night. No, they got didn't. A new guy. That's what you do.
It's indicative of what we dealt with in the business. Certainly in the last part of it, there was no thought about what was going to happen next. I mean, we were supposed to be what happened next, and they freaked out after 5 hours of us. So there was no thought. I mean, there should have been thought. I mean, the guy had cancer, for fuck's sake. He almost had a heart attack 10 years ago. Somebody should have thought, this guy could die. He's not a young man.
You are so right. But you know what? You gotta believe this one, if you believe anything, that this was an unmentionable subject in the halls of the upper echelons of iHeart. And right, we're not going to talk about it because Rush is still doing the show. we can still there. It would be unseemly. In fact, it's like Trump. You don't talk about things that if they got back to him would get him upset. As you can tell, Limbaugh is such a fuck and was such a fuck that if he ever found out that they were making plans for what was going to go on after he was dead, he would be mad. And what was his leverage? What was he going to do? Go to the ABA? What was he going to play in the USFL? Was there somewhere else that was? No. So,
he's going to play in the USFL. Yeah, he's going to get Donald Trump to sign him as the quarterback for the New Jersey Generals. No,
the World Hockey Association.
All right, guys, we're here to discuss pineapple. Okay, we're not gonna say it. I want us to have a real frank discussion about the pineapple, because at some point it's gonna happen. Okay, don't say it out loud.
So what happens when the pineapple gets so rotten that it's unedible and we have to throw it out? We need to get something to replace the pineapple, don't we? What should it be?
Well, no, I would just like for us to have months and months and months of talking about how good the pineapple was when we had it, how delicious it was, and how the pineapple changed our lives. I don't want to have a banana in there to replace the pineapple, or maybe an apple or an orange. I just want to talk about the pineapple for months and months and months at a time, because that's what's going to happen. And we can get very cheap hosts to come in and talk about how delicious the pineapple was. Like the cheapest guys ever can go. That's even the sickest idea, is that guys like this idiot at WBT and these other people, this is like, yeah, I'll go on. This will be my audition for the big time, right?
Britt, think about the coincidence, the fortuitousness of the moment where Trump and Limbaugh essentially disappeared at the same time.
Yeah.
At the same time. Because think about it, if there had been a vibrant Limbaugh, or even a kind of broken down Limbaugh like he was the last year, but you know, when he was on, he was 70% of whatever he was, which is good enough for people that don't give a shit anyway. They just want to hear him.
Right.
If he had continued on into the Biden administration, he would have been the focal point. He would have been a very, very effective. This was Bill Clinton coming back. This was Obama being president for Limbaugh. Limbaugh, way more effective when he's attacking and being on the other side than trying to defend the indefensible, which is what he was doing for 4 years. And
plus,
again,
Trump,
we'll ask Little Rush about that when we talk to him on the next podcast.
Well, Trump would have very easily been able to be on the show, and he would have got. I mean, he could have driven over to and been live in studio, and then you'd see those two assholes out golfing all the time. I mean, all of that stuff would have been happening, I think.
Well, Limbaugh had a pretty successful website, and things like that. So that really. I think for the world, it was a great thing that they're both gone at the same time.
Well, would you say that one of the useless, stupid, feckless Trump children would have been able to take over the Limbaugh letter? Do you think that would have been able to happen?
No. They're all, Britt, over time, they will be as useless as we've known them to be. They're as talentless as we know they are. And they're as futureless as any other children of presidents in our lifetime, right?
Yeah.
You know, the most successful current children. Well, Obama's kids they're still too young to render a judgment on them.
Caroline Schlossberg has done a lot of things. She's been great.
Yeah, she's done okay. And the Bush girls, the one is on the Today Show, and the other one, I guess, has turned out okay. But anything with the last name Trump or related to Trump right now is just dead meat. And I think you'd agree with this analysis of what Trump is doing. And there's a great column in today's Washington Post by Paul Waldman. And this goes back to what we were talking about yesterday. And he says, I can't wait for Trump to start a social media platform to go right along with Trump steaks, Trump vodka, Trump the game, and all the other business failures that he has done. Because he does point out, and you were always talking about this, and I was always shaking my head, so that the Trump News Network. Well, it looks very quickly now that Trump figured out that that's hard. That would be really, really hard to do that. Because, look, there are already a couple of non-Fox right-wing networks that are floundering. And if he was the fourth one, if you count Newsmax and One America and then Fox, if he was fourth, the ability to get something like that off the ground, sustain it, it's very, very difficult. It's just not. So he threw in the towel. It's a lot easier to start a social media website. However, it's not easy to start one that's going to be successful.
Right.
You are not going to be the next Facebook. You are not going to be the next Twitter. And Parler was not even the next Parler, right? It's toast. And if you start a social network where the only people who really give a shit about it are people that agree with you, you've got nothing. As bad as Facebook is, as bad as Facebook's been in propagating all kinds of right-wing shit, everyone on Facebook isn't of one political persuasion. They're just
correct.
Not. Same with Twitter. But if Trump brands it, if it is TWTR instead of Twitter being Trumpwar, whatever you call it, the rest of us may just observe it from afar, but no one's going to be a part of it, and it's going to go nowhere. So Waldman's point is, let him have at it. Let him go for it. And we'll just sit back and enjoy the Schadenfreude as this one bites the dust also. Plus, think about how many people who would actually have any kind of even near expertise to do something like that would do it for Donald Trump. What is he going to offer them? Some kind of IOU for? He has no money.
Nope.
Right? What's he gonna pay him with? Oh well, we'll get more contributions, and then I'll pay a cut of those. You can't do that.
Nope.
You can't do that. So that one's going nowhere too. And this has just been a very tough 24 hours for everybody. And as you get the details about the Colorado massacre, you can really call that one a massacre. It really just brings up the same question that we ask. Is this what America is? And with every one of these in passing, the answer is more likely yes.
Yeah.
This is it. And are we going to tolerate this? Well, personally, no, I can't tolerate it. But from a political standpoint, it gets tolerated. It is having mass shootings in the United States is part of our paying the price for X. I can't figure it out. The rest of the country or the rest of the world seems not to be tolerant of this kind of violence. So we really are exceptional, aren't we?
Yeah, that's American exceptionalism.
Really exceptional, because we'll put up with this because of a fucked up part of our U.S. Constitution that is unclear, open to interpretation, and has been used certainly in the last post-World War II era to justify all kinds of craziness and the proliferation of guns here that no other country in the world would put up with or puts up with. And hey, we're losing our freedom anyway. Even though we've got more guns, it doesn't seem we're more free. But
it turns out when you're dead, you don't have a lot of freedom.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna run along here, and I'll tell you what, we're just gonna wait for the weekend to come, because we've got those two perfect brackets still working.
Oh, it's still rocking and rolling. On that.
Right. And this could be our day. This could be our week.
See you.